if you'd like to, thank you for joining me today, ladies. If you could start by sort of introducing yourselves, that would be great.
I'm Teal. I'm a dietitian in South Africa. I've got my own private practice there, and I've been involved with Matthew's Friends for about a year and a half now, that I consult and help the parents over the internet.
I'm Carrie Loughran, and I'm from the United States, Portland, Oregon, and I've been doing the ketogenic diet classical for about 12 years, and I do it a little differently by managing it by blood sugars and blood ketones.
I'm Liz Neal, and I'm from the UK, and I started work with Helen Cross on the ketogenic diet trial at Great Ormond Street 6 years ago. I first met Emma over 5 years ago when I was involved in doing a ketogenic diet for her son Matthew, and at present I'm involved in the analysis and results of the ketogenic diet trial at Great Ormond Street.
My name is Heidi Pfeiffer. I'm a dietitian at Mass General Hospital for Children. I've been working with Dr. Elizabeth Teal for the past 9 years and working with the ketogenic diet for the past 10. And we've developed also the low glycemic index treatment that we've been using over the past 5 years.
Thank you for that. Now, we've got sitting around this table 4 ladies that work with the ketogenic diet, and that's all that you do, and some of you have been doing it for a long time. Why are other dietitians so scared of this treatment? Why are we up against dietitians that don't want to do it? Can you throw some light on this? Why, you experienced dietitians, why would it be that colleagues don't want to do it?
The fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something traditionally used even in our teaching. When we go to schools to become dietitians, it's not mainstream, that it's part of the curriculum, so it's something that they're not familiar with, and the unfamiliar is always kind of hesitant to go into it.
Right. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and I think in the UK there's also a fear of the length of time it takes. In the UK it would generally be a paediatric children's dietitian who's doing this, and they're often very, very pushed. If you go to a general hospital, they're involved in different types of treatment of different types of paediatric problems, and a ketogenic diet per patient or per child is going to use up a lot more time than most other treatments, and I think a lot of people get very, very frightened of that time, and there is not in the UK the level of funding that I think we both feel. We both have a bit of a mission in increasing the level of funding there is and availability for dietitians to be able to do the treatment.
I think the level of funding is pretty much, worldwide.
Yeah,
Definitely.
do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also found in South Africa that the awareness is not very big there, especially with the doctors. And I would say the majority of dietitians don't want to go against the doctors. The doctors are telling us there's no medical evidence on there, and they just say, okay, no, that's fine, so we won't try the diet even.
That's recently changed though with the carte blanche program.
Yes,
It's gone out
it
for
has.
you because
Yes.
you're being swamped now.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's
It's
good.
all about referrals of the doctors though. It's the parents phoning me, which is great, so we can still do it.
So there's still there's the desire for. I don't think that I think we're all in agreement that there is enough parents that do want this treatment. And now with the work that's going on that you're doing with low glycemic and with the Atkins,
Yes.
more and more adults are now going to find this.
Yes.
I mean, Carrie, your position was started by basically demand from parents, wasn't it?
Absolutely. After the Dateline production that was on, in 1995, I had, the neurologist gave me a list of 100 families waiting to start whenever I was ready. And I had a waiting list of a year long the first year. And it was a big learning curve. I didn't know what I didn't know back then. And there wasn't, Millie Kelly couldn't answer all my questions back then. But you just kind of, like all of us, we kind of end up being alone when we're figuring it out, when we're problem solving it. At least now with this history, and especially with Matthew's Friends, we can all communicate and share what works for us. Because what can work for one child may very well work for another child, but not everybody. And I think that's kind of where this Atkins and the low glycemic and the classical and the MCT, it's all kind of degrees of ketosis. And some kids don't need a large degree of ketosis to get seizure free. And some kids just need a slight degree of ketosis, or not even ketosis at all, just low carb. And I think that's important to share and understand. And I think the big questions that I heard, especially after our Boston conference, was how do you know where to start? And I think if we maybe this sharing of information, especially through Matthew's Friends, we can start looking at as maybe degrees of ketosis, and you start mild, and then if it doesn't work, you keep going up, and you might end up on a 4-to-1 ratio, but it doesn't mean everybody needs to be there.
I mean, certainly with the meetings that are going on now, obviously, this one that's in the UK this year, and then next year in Arizona with the Charlie Foundation working there, so you've got all of a sudden this increase of knowledge coming on. I mean, we all know that Jim basically is more or less single-handedly responsible for the resurgence of interest. He certainly was the inspiration behind setting up Matthew's Friends here in the UK. But going back to that time-consuming bit that obviously some dietitians are scared of, with the EKM now in the UK and in Europe, and with Keto Calculator in the States, dietetic time for calculating has been dramatically reduced. Do you think that message isn't getting across to dietitians, that actually the time you think it's going to take to calculate is not actually taking as long because we now have these tools at our disposal? I mean, hand calculating it, yes, it must take forever. But do you think it's easier, Liz?
It's certainly easier, but I think you've got to look at it as the difference between someone who's done, I don't know, multiple figures of ketogenic diets. They pick up something like EKM, you can do it very, very quickly. I mean, I think we're probably all sort of world record holders in ketogenic diet speed, aren't we? Yes. Dietetics. But you take somebody who's not really done this before, and it's fine saying, great, here's a computer program that will make it quicker. It's still a whole new concept for them, it's a whole new diet, and I think that will put people off. The textbooks will still say, and I think there are still things that say, you need an X number of hours for monitoring. It's not just the initial calculation, it is a very intensive diet, whether you do it on EKM or not. You do need to be very involved with the families. And I think the other thing is that a lot of dietitians may be a bit out on their own. I had the luxury when I started this job that I worked with a ketogenic diet nurse. We were a team, and I worked with a paediatric neurologist who had that as one of her special interests. So we therefore I was in a sort of cosy, supportive team network to start this off. You're out there on your own, you haven't really done, maybe you've done a few, but you haven't really done that many, and you don't really have that level of support. It makes it more frightening. So I think it may not be actually the time in practice, if that makes sense. It may be the actual perceived time that it's all going to take. You've got to do all the monitoring by yourself, you've got to learn a new computer program, you've got to sort of read up on this and that with the diet. It makes it feel like it's going to take a lot longer, even if actually in practice it doesn't, once you've done a few.
Once you've done a few, yeah, you obviously, it's like any learning curve with a new job, really, isn't it? The more you do it, the quicker it becomes. So what I'm hearing is you would like to see more support for dietitians, more like these kind of meetings, like the Matthew's Friends organised, like the Charlie Foundation are doing. So it's more of those support networks for dietitians, your more phone calls, your emailing lists and all that kind of thing. Is that the kind of thing you would be looking for?
Right, because it was that when I started out, I didn't know what I didn't know. And, I read out, and it's that N of 1 that becomes the N of 2, and then you add on and you just learn through the experiences that you had. So, I've, over the years, have just accumulated that experience. So, and I think, having these meetings allows dietitians to not one-on-one ask those questions because she doesn't know what questions to ask, but hearing experiences and hearing what other centers are doing that helps them. Because I remember being that person that was alone. I had a wonderfully supportive physician, but she didn't know the diet calculations and what to do with the diet. So having that, is always helpful, kind of that little hand-holding that dietitians might need in the beginning. And that's why anytime I get a phone call, I'm more than willing to help other dietitians because I've been there not knowing what to do next.
That is scary.
Yeah, it is.
In the beginning, when we didn't really even know what ketosis looked like, I remember anything was the diet's fault. No matter what it was, it's the diet. And I started saying, okay, you're right. Let's figure it out. And then over time, you start to see patterns of what it looked like. And now it's pretty well documented of what the kids go through. And that's helpful, I think, for the new dietitians to come in to see that, we've broke some grounds that they don't have to make the same mistakes we did.
That's excellent. So I presume you would like to see more of the meetings held and carry on with that, more of the support network, more of the shared knowledge.
Yes, and I think also part of the point I was making is if neurologist is keen to do the diets and treatment, it's not viewed as just the dietitian's problem. You know, not problem.
Yeah.
That's probably, you know, the whole diet is the dietitian's business, and actually that's fine. But you know, we're going to do it's a team approach. You know, the neurologist needs to take that on as well, and they need to be very much part of decision making with the diet. And I think it's the general hospitals as opposed to the tertiary centres, which perhaps that doesn't happen. And you've got very much of a polarising, and the dietitian is the one who deals with the diet, and that's it, go away and get on with it, which is so frightening.
And that's exactly what's happening in South Africa, because we've got no keto centres there. I'm in private practice, I don't even work in a hospital. And the neurologist is saying exactly that. Do the diet's got nothing to do with me. You've got to fine-tune and just get these kids Caesar-free. So if you have the support from Matthew's friends or whatever, or the dietitians that's done this before, it's amazing. Because otherwise you're so alone, then rather just leave it instead of going into it and learning more. So the support is very important, yeah.
As ketogenic dietitians and low glycemic index dietitians, this may sound like a daft question, but what do you find most rewarding about your job?
Healing children and families.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Seeing children running around that weren't
May not
running
have.
around before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know from my point of view, obviously my own son benefited greatly from the diet, and Liz was a dietitian that treated him. I mean, to me, she saved my son, and I know that families look on their dietitians as doing the same. So, you know, I know from personal experience of speaking to families that the dietitians are held on huge pedestals, you know, with the families. When you've helped our children, you know, we are at desperation point. So thank you very much for what you do, and please keep doing it.
For sure.
And would you please recommend it to all your colleagues to do it, and tell them not to be so scared, because we really do need them, but we appreciate all that you do. So thank you very much. That's it. Is that okay?